George, good to see you, man.
Likewise, man.
Appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited, bro.
The maiden voyage.
Ground zero right here.
Ground zero. So first podcast, I was thinking we can talk about ourselves. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves?
I love it. All about me.
And go through your journey, what brought you into this business, what business we're in, what we actually do, what that means.
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff. So what do you do?
What do? I do what you do, man. We sell real estate. We sell commercial real estate. I guess more in depth, commercial real estate, industrial real estate is what we specialize in, or what I specialize in. Being a broker is being someone of value, someone that offers resources. So as a broker, what I do is add value in anything I do, in anything and everything I do. I think the broker life starts at home. Negotiations is everything we do. So we negotiate in everything we do. But
Yeah,
above
we both
that,
have kids.
we both have kids, so we gotta always be negotiating with our kids.
Yeah.
You know, if one of my clients needs something with the city, if they're having an issue with a specific permit, I pick up the phone and I call my contacts in the city or the county, an expediter, to make sure that my client's taken care of. And we don't have to be in the middle of a deal or a transaction, but I am his resource for connections. And either it be an attorney, either it be someone at the county, an inspector, an electrician, a plumber, whatever it is, I'm that person who has the resources.
Not only that, but also negotiation with a seller, a buyer.
Right, and obviously
landlord.
what I do every day is I'm trying to find opportunities, trying to find transactions. There's investors out there, there's a lot of money, especially today, that is, waiting to be invested. And we are the resources to find these transactions, find these deals. So we're always constantly creating opportunity. We don't wait around, we're always trying to find opportunities, calling the owners, calling large funds. On the leasing side, we negotiate obviously on behalf of the tenants and help them the same way, finding, making sure that we get them free rent, making sure we get them a good deal, going out of our way to make multiple offers in 5-6 different landlords for that tenant, and seeing who gives us the best offer and negotiate with each one to see where the best deal is. And at the end of the day, that's what we do. We just add value.
Also, with what you're saying, with how much money has poured into this space, I don't think people realize just how much money has poured into industrial real estate. Once, you can speak to this more than I can, but in prior years, industrial was kind of the redheaded stepchild of commercial real estate. It wasn't sexy. Funds looked down upon it. Now, within the last few years, you've seen a huge allocation from pension funds, life insurance companies, towards industrial real estate in markets like Miami, South Florida.
Yeah.
And what it's done is just created this huge surge in property values. What a lot of landlords and owners don't realize just yet is how much equity they're sitting on. So, one way that we add value is by letting them know, like, look, there's, all of Wall Street is looking at your property right now. Is this something that you want to capitalize on right now? It's an unprecedented time in the history of the business, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right now the market, it's crazy. So right now we're post-COVID.
Yeah.
We're 2 years in?
Yeah.
And going to third year. And it's crazy. It's funny because before COVID, there was a plateau in the market. I want to say 2019, 19, where there was a plateau and there was like a standstill. And I remember that like it was yesterday, because no one wanted to sell and no one wanted to buy. And it was kind of a peak. There was a peak at the market. It was like they were plateauing for a little while there, and everyone was still. And then all of a sudden, COVID comes. And then that's where everybody freaked out and panicked and thought, okay, now this is the crash. A lot of people thought that was going to be the crash, you know, which, by the way, it impacted many industries, many businesses out there suffered and even closed down. You know, a bunch of restaurants, you know.
Office is still,
Office took a great hit, huge hit.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's rebounding now, but, no one wanted to, everyone was afraid. It was fear, driven into everyone, and no one to go into the offices and work. But going back to that, there was a plateau, and all of a sudden COVID comes, and everyone thought, okay, it's coming down. And what happened was the injection of capital into the market, which just skyrocketed. I mean, everything just went crazy, bananas. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the price points were just crazy. Why? Because there's more money in the market now. More money, obviously, it created a crazy inflation market.
Yeah.
So where we're at today, leasing is crazy. Leasing is, off the walls. Rates are, you're talking Class C. I was talking with a broker the other day. Class C industrial rented at $19 a square foot, where your ceiling height is 18, 20 feet.
What would it be prior to the surge?
Prior to the surge, we were looking at $10, $11.
Oh my God, almost double.
Yeah, there was a point this year where literally I had to go back to my listing brochures and change them every month and a half. The prices were changing every month and a half. It was changing. It was going up. It was going up. I've never experienced that, since I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Prices, you have to change them, and it kept going up. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think obviously now with what the feds are doing and with the rates, this is, quantitative tightening right now.
Yeah.
But I still see the leasing market on fire.
Yeah. There's just a lot of businesses that need space.
They need space.
And there's no new supply of product.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
new buildings. I think that's, it's common in some markets around the country, but I think specifically to South Florida, because we have the Atlantic Ocean and we have the Everglades. And I remember, a conference we went to a few years ago where they said, if you built out all of the industrial, and this is a year and a half ago maybe, so it's even worse now, but if you built out all the industrial land in South Florida, you would only have 4 million square feet of actual warehousing. That's, if you have Home Depot taking up 1 million square feet in one lease, that's nothing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So with all the new business coming into town because of COVID, it's just, we've seen this huge explosion in demand. And
yeah, internationally as well.
Yeah.
You're having a lot of migration coming over here. Look at Colombia.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're having a lot of more, everyone internationally is coming to the United States on a macro level. More so to Miami.
Yeah.
So you're getting an influx. So it's hard to describe the market in general because Miami is so different. Yeah. We're a teenage market compared to Chicago, New York, California. Yeah. We're babies. But now, after COVID, after all this has happened, the state of Florida, obviously because of its favorable taxes and obviously palm trees and blue skies, is bringing all this talent, all these investors over here. It's booming, man.
It's booming.
Miami's booming. Miami is the spot to be.
Yeah.
If you want to own real estate and with more future growth, this is the place to be. Talking about the restraint of land or the constraint of land, there's no land here.
None.
Where acres are selling at, I've seen 4 million. I think more, over 4 million an acre. Yeah. I just had a podcast, I think it was this year, and I was quoting 3 million.
Yeah.
Now we're at 4.
Yeah.
We're still in the same year.
So backing up a little bit, how long have you been in the business?
I've been in the business since 2014.
Mm-hmm. And what'd you do before brokerage?
Before brokerage, I was into marketing. It's legal and medical marketing. I worked with doctors and attorneys, marketed for both, and I liked it. There was just no room for growth. I remember like it was yesterday. I was approached by Frank Trellis. Frank, if you're out there, love you, man.
Killing
He recruited me. He actually went to. I was actually working as a marketing director for Body RX. It was an anti-aging medical center. My brother owned it, and the goal was to franchise it and to make it a big thing. And Frank would get his treatments there. So Frank would visit. Frank was a friend of the family, and I always knew Frank as the baller because he made money. I just didn't really know what he did.
Yeah.
And he was in real estate, and Frank knew me. I was younger, so he always knew me as Pablo's little brother. And so one day I was at the center. He actually approached my brother and said, "Hey, I would like to, approach your brother because we're opening up a firm and, a small office. We're starting our office in Doral. It was called Cornerstone. And I would love for your brother to be a part of it. I think he has what it takes to be part of the team." For me, it was like a huge honor because I knew Frank as, someone who was very well off.
So he gave you the pitch, said, "Hey, I want you to come on the team. I think you can be great." You say, "Yes, absolutely."
No, I'd say, "Well, I don't know. I didn't even know what commercial real estate was." I was like, "Whoa, hold on, I was about to get married." I told Frank, I said, "Frank, let's hold off. Let me talk to my wife. Let me see what this whole thing is about." But it was initially it was like it was impacting because he approached me and he's like, "Hey, I believe, I see a lot in you. I think you'll be the perfect fit for the team." And so for me, it was huge. And so I started looking and researching what commercial real estate is, and I started reading, and I see that they don't even make money. Some don't make money for the first year. I was like, whoa. I was like, dude, I can't, I was like, I can't.
What do you mean no pay?
I can't. I'm getting married, I'm responsible for this woman,
So was he just like, "Don't worry about it. You're going to do great"? Or did you have income on the side that you were?
Oh, I did have income because
Yeah.
remember I had the medical and
You're still doing the
doing
previous
that, and I
marketing
had some
business.
residual, so I had
Yeah.
some system in place where I was getting residual.
So then, okay, so first day, you go to the bullpen. He says, "All right, you just got your license. Did you get any
Yeah.
training, or was it just like just call these numbers, say this script?"
Man, that's funny. So thinking back at that, the first day I remember I met Eric and Lewis. Eric and Lewis were the two juniors in the bullpen at that time. And they welcomed me to the team. And I think part of that process, I think Frank was like, "Hey, this is what you got to do." Actually, back up. I needed to read a huge book called Top Dogs. Top Dogs in Real Estate.
The
Now
OG.
we have it online. Now we have it on an app. But before it was a huge binder. So Hector, which was Frank's partner, said, "Hey, read the entire thing." He called it the Bible. Read it.
Yeah.
So I read the whole thing. So we went through office, through retail, through investments, through land, through all types of, I read everything. And I took notes on all of it. And I was so eager to start. And it took me so long. It took me about like a month to read the whole thing, to go through it. Maybe like 3 weeks. And then when I'm done, he goes, "What took you so long?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I only told you to read the industrial section." I was like, "Oh." It's like, all right, whatever.
Overachiever.
I learned. I'm an overachiever. So,
So at what point did you start making calls?
the calls. Okay. So, fun fact, man.
Every broker's favorite thing.
It was, for me, it was the most terrifying thing.
Yeah.
It really, literally took me a month of just watching Eric make the calls. I was watching Eric make the calls. I'll see how he would stand up and just, pace back and forth. And I would just stare at him and how he would make these calls. I'm like, how can he call strangers and talk to them? I just couldn't get it. And I was like, at this point, I'm married and I have a wife at home. I'm like, I have to do this. I have to do it. It took me a month to finally pick up the phone and start dialing on my list.
Wow. What was the breaking point where you're like, all right, this is the day?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Did you black out your first call? You pick up the phone and
oh
you
yeah, lots
totally
of blackouts.
forgot?
I would knock on doors because then I found that knocking on doors was easier for me.
Yeah.
I just felt better with the face-to-face interaction than over the phone.
Yeah.
So the first day, I mean, it was hot summer Miami day. I got a stack of cards, knocked on a bunch on this industrial park, and Hector would say, "Get the phone, get their name, get their lease expiration date, and know how much space they're occupying." I got a stack of cards and didn't get any of that information. I come back to the office. I'm like, "Hey, I got a stack, man. I'm great." He goes, "All right, so when does their lease expire?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I just got a bunch of cards." He's like, it's part of the learning curve,
Yeah, yeah. So now you're a few months in. You're making calls. What was the first call that you were like, I think this is a client. I think this is a deal.
Oh man,
wasn't it Dalbani?
Dalbani, it must have been Dalbani, yeah.
So Dalbani's still a client.
He's still
even
a client
today.
Yeah.
10 years later.
10 years later,
And you've done countless.
I've done some transactions, not countless, but
Right.
I've done a few.
Done a few.
So when I'm calling, and we would print these pages from CoStar, and on all the property owners and numbers, and you would see the size of the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like a small little photo.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, this is a big one. And I remember, him picking up the phone and saying, I said, "I have someone interested in buying your property. Would you entertain selling it?" I don't think he didn't say yes, but he said, "You know what? How much, what's the price?" That's what he inquired about, the price per foot on the lease, because he has 118,000 square feet and he had a huge vacancy.
Mm-hmm.
He was under-occupying or underutilizing his warehouse, his property. So that was my first lease. That was my first deal. I think it was 25,000 square feet or 30,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great. And it was a great experience.
And that's your first year.
That was my first year.
Like first 6 months, probably.
Yeah.
Was it that deal, or what? What was the first deal that you were absolutely hooked? Like, oh, you saw the light, that there is no other job like this on planet Earth.
That was the office building I sold in Doral. It was the old PBS&J office right off of 107th Avenue. It's a 93,000 square foot office building, Class B, and I was fresh, right? So at church, there's this multi-millionaire that attends to at our church, and I was just fresh. I just got my license, and his name is Paco. He passed away actually a couple of months ago. So yeah, rest in peace, Paco. I go to him. I say, "Hey, Paco, I got my real estate license, and I'm only doing commercial real estate." And in Spanish, he tells me, "Hey, find me a good deal. I have $30 million to buy a good deal, and I have to buy."
So he was on a 1031.
He was on a 1031, right? Which I didn't even know what a 1031 was at that time. I was so new. And he turns around, this is at my church, he turns around and there's the bank, is it the U.S. Century Bank? Yeah, the U.S. Century Bank building on 87th Avenue. He goes, "I tried buying this building, but the owner, he wants too much for it." So I go to the office and I tell my broker and I tell Frank, "Hey, I have this Spaniard at my church. He says he has like $30 million he needs to spend on a deal. He's looking for a good deal." And they all just kind of look at each other and they kind of stumble a bit. And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "We got the deal for him." They're like, "We got the deal for him right now." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "This is exciting."
You're excited? I'm excited.
I'm excited. And so it wasn't even listed. It wasn't a listed deal. So they pulled up the office building and like, "This is the deal for him." And it was a 7 cap. 7 cap deal, 1 tenant, publicly traded company.
Wow.
But they only had like about 3 years left on their lease. And they were out at the end of the 3 years. So that was the only thing, but Paco's like, "I like it." He toured it, and that was the deal. That was my first life-changing deal.
Yeah.
Where now I could go to work with some cushion.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry. Once I made that money, I was like, okay, now I can prospect. Now I can make calls without having to worry about when I'm going to get paid or
Yeah. That pressure is.
Release that pressure. So
Yeah.
if you let the pressure get to you, man, it's hard to make calls. But you have to learn how to block it out. As a broker, especially in the beginning, if you learn how to block those, that pressure out and just focus on what you need to do, I think it gives you more of that fire.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the life-changing deal.
Was there anything that you did, before that, this may be helpful, certainly helpful for me. Anything that you did before your calls to prep to kind of just, push away all those worries and just focus on, okay, just make the call, see if, what did you do to take the pressure off of yourself?
Prayer. Prayer, man. I would pray. And prayer, I felt like at that time of my life, when I would pray, I felt like God was actually there, like talking back and listening, and it was like such a deep connection with him. Mm-hmm. And I would pray before I would pick up the call. Mm-hmm. Before I would pick up the phone to make any calls, I would lock myself in the conference room and I would close my eyes and pray. I said, God, this is, use me. I'm going to make every call. I'm going to do my best, and you have my back.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you took yourself out of it.
It took myself out, and it would relieve the pressure. It would kind of take that pressure off of me, because I knew that once I prayed, God had my back. Mm-hmm. And all I needed to do was do my best. And I felt like I wanted to do more calls. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was in this zone where I was like, sometimes I didn't even have lunch. Mm-hmm. I would just stay in because I enjoyed it. It was kind of like this rewarding feeling. I got someone on the hook. It's kind of like fishing.
Yeah.
You're fishing, you got something, you're like, oh man, I want to go for the next one.
Yeah.
And then you just have that list, and you're getting emails. So even getting emails was exciting for me. I was like, all right, I'm building something. I'm building my, my database. I'm building my business here.
Get me excited, man. You're getting me inspired,
Yeah, man.
Because it's so easy once you're in the trenches to get down and stress out, and but really just doing the work, making the calls, having the conversations, and taking yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Just concentrating on that and doing the best you can and showing up.
Yeah, I think the issue is, man, we're in the selfish mentality where we're always thinking about ourselves, our feelings, how do we feel, this and that. When in reality, when you're coming to work, you got to block all that stuff out, and it's really not what you're going to give out. What is it that you're going to give? Make the calls. How are you going to help that next person? Give them something of value. And when you're doing that, that's where you're going to go to the next level.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about yourself, stop thinking about how you feel, and then really give it 100% of what you're going to give to the next person, the calls you're going to make, and you're going to go to the next level. If you can just keep it simple, less information, keep it simple, dial your calls, build your database, and keep repeating that, and following up is the key. Mm. So as long as you keep doing that, you're going to be solid. And
I think that's one thing I've learned a lot from you is keeping it simple, because it's so easy to segment your database and work on this and get into the nitty gritty, and then you pretty much lose the big picture. So just keep it simple. It wins every time. What you were saying kind of reminded me of a book. It's geared more towards authors and writers, but it's called The War of Art. And it's just all about showing up, right? So, there's a reason I don't write. It's because it's really, really hard. But what this guy says, I'm blanking on the author's name, but he calls that feeling of not wanting to do the work resistance, right? So when you show up to write a book or to make your call or to knock on the door or do the thing, there's always a sense of resistance. Like, maybe I should go organize my database, or maybe I should research this.
Yeah, I
research this a little bit more.
I did a lot of that. That is true. So in the 30 days before I made my first call, I would do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta use the restroom.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta make some coffee. You want coffee?
Yeah, you never pee so much until you have to cold call.
Until you have to cold call. Freaking peeing all the time.
So, what he's saying is basically exactly what you're saying, which is show up, do the work. The work is what needs to be done, and the resistance has nothing to do with the work.
That's it. That's it, man.
So, fast forwarding a little bit, you're starting to get some momentum. The calls are starting to returned some clients. You're starting to do more deals. What, you're at Cornerstone. Talk about your transition into opening a shop and your transition into being a broker of record.
So just for the record, I loved being an agent. Being an agent for me was great because I just had to worry about myself and my production, my pipeline, my leads, my farm area, and I would just focus on that. The reason why, or the transition from there to being a broker, was really just fell on my lap. I wasn't looking to be a broker. I was happy at Cornerstone. So how that happened was I come across a listing, right? Calling Yellow Pages, by the way. Yeah, it was 134,000 square feet freezer facility in North Miami. We're about to lose the listing because we haven't sold it. The seller at in that time only wanted a buyer, and it was a vacant freezer facility.
As opposed to a tenant.
When freezer was not sexy, cold storage was not sexy at this time. All the institutions did not like it. No one, they just wanted big boxes, high ceilings. This is low ceilings, but it was freezer cooler with great exposure off of I-95, okay? But the thing was, there was no income. And the seller didn't want to lease up to multiple tenants. He wanted one tenant. So it was hard for me to find a 134,000 square foot tenant for that property. We're about to lose it. Then comes, I did the tour. I've done the tour many times. I was already getting tired of touring it because it was kind of like, it was a big property. I would spend pretty much all day for a tour. So Michael Mandage, I didn't really know him at the time. I know he had just acquired a small bay in Doral, small bay cold storage. And my broker kind of tells me that he wants to see the property. So I toured him, and he loved the way that I, explained the property, did the tour, and he trusted everything that I said to him on the property and how quick I would lease it for him, and how quick we can get tenants to lease up the building. I think before or after we close, he tells me, hey, he approached me and he's like, hey, George, I love the way you work. I trust everything and believe everything you're telling me and you say, but I have to second guess your broker. Okay. I'm like, whoa, for me, that was like a red flag. As an agent, you're kind of under your broker and you're kind of submitting yourself under his character and his reputation in the industry. So I didn't want my name to be stained, and it really impacted me. So I was like, you know what? I have to make a change. Even the seller at the time was telling me during that transaction, like, hey man, these guys really like you. They probably want to work with you in the future. They want to, keep doing stuff with you. I was like, great, whatever. Until I think after we closed, Michael said, hey, why don't you get your broker's license and you start your own brokerage and we can partner up. Yeah. And that's how it was proposed to me. And that's why I took him at his offer, and it was great. It was great. That's how I transitioned into being a broker. But I was happy being an agent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a hard transition? Was there a lot to get used to?
It was new to me. It was new because it was only me. And then I had to kind of find some, junior brokers to kind of join me. I had only been 2 years in.
Wow, you're only in the business for 2 years, and then
literally a little bit after 2 years is when all this happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's incredible. So then, fast forwarding a little bit, tell us about the dawn of Smith Commercial Property Group.
We manage a few commercial properties here in Doral. I represent an out-of-state owner, an absentee owner. He lives in Nashville, and a few others here in the area. And so it's always been active. I think it was active right around the same time I got in with the Mandages. And so the transition from me leaving or being the managing broker at Mandage, I was managing the brokerage arm. And so it came to the point where, there was really no added benefit on either side. Yeah. And I felt that it was time, because I had, the right team in place, the right infrastructure to kind of go off on our own. And that's kind of what happened. So
What, with Smith, what are your goals? What's your long-term vision with this brokerage?
My long-term vision with this is to work with a core group of guys on a long-term basis. Like, we're going to do this forever in my eyes, but really to have a core group of guys that I trust and can work, great with, you, Julio, Mai. I think we have a great team. But where I want to take this is I want to be known in the market, in the industry, as the cold storage brokerage nationwide.
Yeah.
On the investment sales side.
Yeah.
So, and I think we've gotten really far up there. I get calls every week from, PE firms, from brokers, from JLL, CBRE, asking for advice and guidance on cold storage rates, lease rates, from PE firms nationwide. They send me deals that are not even listed. They ask me, hey, what do you think about this deal? I think we've done something right to this point.
Yeah.
So
I think it's, cool. Along those cold storage lines, I think it's amazing that such an important aspect of the supply chain and the food we eat and the medicine that we have and everything that goes through those facilities, it's amazing that it's not more looked into and that there isn't more people in the space, because it's such an opportunity. To give you an example, give you a few stats. For the last 10 years, the amount of cooler containers on shipping containers worldwide, that the big tankers that bring basically everything from the ports, the amount of containers as a percentage of those loads has grown by 5 to 10% every year.
Wow.
Over the last 10 years. So, when you have a ship full of containers, the amount of cold storage containers on that ship has grown 5 to 10% every year.
That's a lot.
Not only that, but they're projecting that the freezer capacity and cold storage business in the US is going to have an 11% compounding annual growth rate over the next 10 years.
That's insane.
That's insane.
That's
Can you
insane.
imagine getting an 11% return every year for 10 years? So the amount of growth in the sector is huge. The amount of interest is getting bigger by the day, as you just said.
Yeah.
More and more players are coming in. There's a big opportunity because of the demand. Kind of like what's going on with South Florida. You talk to the big 3 cold storage operators, Lineage, Americold, US Cold, they're all full. They have no pallet positions available.
Yep.
So what that's done to the customers is it's decreased the amount of services that these companies can provide, because they're like, well, why are we going to offer any services? We're already full. We don't need to do pick and pack. We don't need to do these specialized services for you. So there's a huge opportunity on the operator side to come in and service those clients. There's more and more spec development that's going on. I think more developers are really starting to see the light. There's some new players coming into town.
Yeah.
with bigger projects. So I think this growth is only going to continue and probably expand as the supply chain changes, as consumer taste changes, because this is all being fueled by more and fresher produce, goods that have expiration dates that are closer to the purchase date. So all of that are factors in this huge growth. So I'm just happy to be a part of the team and kind of seeing it firsthand and almost looking behind the curtain.
Yeah.
On this.
It's great.
It's amazing. Some of the tours we've done are just unbelievable.
And we met by a cold storage call.
That's right. I don't know if I told you this, but my dad is actually a organic inspector for a third-party company that the FDA hires. And he had a client that was looking for, 2,500 square foot of cooler space, which doesn't exist. I didn't know it at the time, So, I was looking on LinkedIn. I'd seen a few of your listings, and I saw cold storage in your title. I was like, oh, this guy must know. He's got to have something. So I called you up and was like, hey man, you got a 2,500 square foot cooler space? And you're like, dude, no. It doesn't even exist. I'm like, oh, okay. So we just started shooting the shit. And, and we hit it off great,
cool.
you know. I knew right away. I was like, man, this guy's on the level. He knows what he's doing.
That's awesome, man.
And I'm happy to be a part of the crew, man. It's been
There we
great.
go, man. And we're starting our first podcast, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is ground zero, guys. This is ground zero.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah. Maiden voyage.
Yeah.
George, thank you, man.
You got
Appreciate
man.
it.
Absolutely. So if you're watching this right now, follow us, subscribe, click the link, slam that bell, follow us, share, all the good stuff.